You know that feeling, right? It's Monday morning, and the week ahead just feels heavy. On paper, everything's fine. You've got the good job, the decent salary, you've checked all the boxes, but there's this little voice, isn't there? The one that says you're just running on a treadmill, putting your real life on hold for some distant someday that's maybe decades away. And that leads to the really scary question that I think we all have in the back of our minds. What if that later we're all grinding so hard for just never shows up? It's a pretty heavy thought, but it's the exact question that kicked off a whole revolution in how we look at work. So, let's dive in. Back in 2007, this book comes out that was less of a friendly suggestion and more like a grenade tossed into the world of 9-to-5s, the 4-hour Workweek. It wasn't just some catchy title, it was a manifesto. It basically told an entire generation, hey, you know all those rules you're following about work? They're totally made up. And if they're made up, they can be broken. The author, Tim Ferriss, he gives this whole system a name. He calls it deferralism. You know it well. It's the classic work for 40 years, retire at 65 plan. And he argues it's just a fundamentally broken strategy. I mean, you're betting everything on your health staying perfect, that you won't be totally bored out of your mind, and worst of all, you're trading your best, most energetic years for your least. So what's the alternative? Well, Ferriss introduces this idea of the new rich. And listen, this has nothing to do with yachts or fancy cars. It's a complete reboot of what wealth even means. For the new rich, the real currency isn't money. It's time and mobility. It's the freedom to do what you want, when you want, and wherever you want to do it. This slide right here, this really nails the shift in thinking. The old rich are all about absolute wealth, just getting a bigger and bigger number in the bank account. But the new rich, they're chasing relative wealth. The question isn't how much money do you have, it's how much freedom does your money actually buy you. You could actually earn less, but be infinitely richer if you own your time and your location. Okay, so how on earth do you actually do this? Well, Ferriss lays out this brilliantly simple 4-step framework he calls DEAL. And this is the practical roadmap to go from that old way of living to becoming one of the new rich. So let's walk through it, starting with D for definition. First up, definition. Before you change any of your habits, you have to completely change your philosophy. So forget about one giant retirement at the end of your life. The goal here is to sprinkle mini retirements all throughout your life. Just imagine taking a month off at 32 to learn Spanish in Argentina, or spending a whole season backpacking through Southeast Asia when you're 38. You're not saving life for later, you're living it right now in awesome installments. Of course, the biggest thing that holds us all back is just fear. And for that, Ferriss has this incredible tool called fear setting. So instead of living with this vague, general dread, you stare it right in the face. You ask yourself, what's the absolute worst that could happen if I did this? On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is that really? And what exact steps would I take to get back on my feet? You'll find that once you actually define your fear, it's usually not that scary after all. So once you've redefined your goals, the next step is E for elimination. This is where you get really practical and start carving out the time to actually live those mini retirements. And it all boils down to this super powerful idea, Pareto's Law, or as most people know it, the 80-20 principle. It's the art of getting way more done by ruthlessly doing way less. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. This principle is everywhere. Roughly 80% of your best results, whether that's sales, your own happiness, whatever, come from just 20% of your efforts. I mean, think about that for a second. It means that most of the stuff you're busy with every day is probably just noise. The whole game is to figure out what that critical 20% is and just mercilessly cut out the rest. And here's the other side of that same coin, Parkinson's Law. We've all lived this. If you give yourself a week to do a task that should take 2 hours, somehow that task magically fills the entire week. So what's the solution? It sounds crazy, but you give yourself less time. A super tight deadline forces you to be ruthless, to focus only on what absolutely matters, and to just get it done. Okay, so you've defined your new life, and you've eliminated all the junk that was filling your day. But what about the important work that's left over? Well, that brings us to A for automation. This is all about building systems that run themselves, so you can remove the biggest bottleneck in the whole equation, you. The first step here is a really simple but powerful one. Calculate what your time is actually worth. It's a simple formula. Just take your annual salary and divide it by the number of hours you really work in a year. So, for example, if you're making 80,000 pounds and you're working 50-hour weeks, your time is worth about 32 pounds an hour. And that number,
That becomes your new filter for making decisions.
And here is the crucial takeaway from that. Any task that can be done for less than your hourly rate, you should delegate it. Full stop. As you can see in this table, if your time is worth £32 an hour, every single hour you spend doing a £10 an hour admin task is a net loss of £22. You're not saving money by doing it yourself, you are actively losing it.
Now, the ultimate goal of automation is what Ferriss calls a muse. Think of this not as some massive, life-consuming startup, but as a small, automated business, like selling an ebook or a tiny dropshipping store for a niche product. It's an engine that's designed specifically to fund your lifestyle, not to become your lifestyle.
And all of this, the defining, the eliminating, the automating, it all leads to this final, totally game-changing pillar, L for liberation. Once you have an automated income stream, you are no longer tied to one desk, in one city, on one rigid schedule. This is where the new rich lifestyle really, truly kicks in. One of the most powerful tools for liberation is something called geo-arbitrage. It sounds fancy, but it's a super simple idea with massive implications. You earn your money in a strong currency like British pounds, but you spend it in a place where the cost of living is low. I mean, look at this. An income that gets you a standard life in London could mean you live a life of total luxury in a city like Chiang Mai, Thailand. You're literally multiplying the power of your money.
But now we get to the part of the book that almost everybody seems to miss. And honestly, it might be the most important piece of the whole puzzle. What do you actually do with all this new freedom? Because as it turns out, the goal isn't just to sit on a beach sipping cocktails all day.
And Ferriss is brutally honest about this. After he actually achieved his own 4-hour work week, he found himself feeling kind of empty. He realized that just getting rid of work didn't magically create a meaningful life. The absence of stress isn't the same thing as the presence of purpose.
And he found the answer in this concept called eustress, which basically means positive stress. It's that feeling you get when you're tackling something that's difficult but also deeply meaningful to you. You know, learning a new language, training for a marathon, mastering an instrument. That, he says, is the real goal of the 4-hour work week.
So, when you boil it all down, the 4-hour work week isn't about being lazy. Not at all. It's about being profoundly intentional. It's a whole system designed to get rid of the meaningless work so you have way more time and energy for the meaningful challenges that actually make life worth living. So where do you even start with all this? Okay, here are 3 concrete things you can actually do right now. First, try that fear-setting exercise on one thing you've been putting off. Second, this week, try to identify your critical 20% of tasks and protect that time like your life depends on it. And third, calculate your hourly rate and find just one recurring task to delegate. Go on, try it this week.
It's so important to remember this. The title, The 4-Hour Work Week, is meant to be a provocation. It's not a literal promise. It's not a magic pill. It's a set of tools, and more importantly, a radical mindset that's designed to make you question everything so you can start consciously designing the life you actually want.
Because that right there is the real powerful idea at the heart of all this. Your life is not some script you have to follow. It's something you can design. The thing is, most people just never realize they're allowed to pick up the tools and start building. So really, the only question left is, when are you going to start?